Hello, everybody, and welcome to this special interview put on by Canadians for Homeopathy. And I'm very pleased to be here today with Roland Guenther, who is a doctor who was born and trained in Germany, who first worked as a surgeon and then as a general practitioner, practicing classical homeopathy since 1985. He lived 3 years on the Blood Reserve in Alberta, Canada, and with the Huichols in the remote mountains of Mexico. The indigenous worldview and spirituality, with its profound relationship to a knowledge of nature, which he learned from the indigenous elders, have had a strong influence on his life, transforming the basis for his unique contribution to homeopathy. He has conducted more than 250 C4 triturations, which constitute the chief source of his understanding of the remedies. In the last 5 years, he's studied the basics of transgenerational and collective trauma healing with the mystic and teacher Thomas Hübl. In this area, he is especially interested in the German-Jewish relationship and the wounds of colonialism and in the Native Americans. He currently lives on Vancouver Island, Canada, where he continues to practice and teach. So, welcome, Roland. Thank you for joining us today.
Hello, everybody, and thank you, Victor, for introducing me. Thank you for having me here. It's a pleasure to meet you.
Okay, so I thought we would begin by discussing a broad topic, namely homeopathy and nature, and the ways in which homeopathy allows us to understand the natural world. And I guess a launching point into this large thematic is to conceptualize, first of all, how our civilization that we find ourselves in uh, understands and views and treats the natural world. And we could say that our civilization rests on a kind of faulty premise, namely that the world is purely physical and mechanical. Yeah, and while this allows for certain kinds of technical advancements to take place, it also leaves us in a situation where we're bereft of a deeper connection or deeper meaning when it comes to understanding or relating to nature. And this goes back a long ways. It's not a new problem, but in a sense, it's compounded itself more and more. Um, and we can reach back to figures like René Descartes, who understood that the physical world was a merely mechanical system, a kind of vast machine that was governed by predictable and mathematical laws, and whose ultimate ambition was ultimately the conquest of nature. And there's a famous saying of Descartes that the conquest of nature is to be achieved through measure and number. And so we are, in a sense, living in the aftermath of that conquest. And so, with that said, perhaps we can start by talking about this faulty premise that our civilization rests on, and some of the ways in which, when we understand homeopathy in a deeper sense, and homeopathy and how it relates to an understanding of nature, how it might give us some tools that we can use to reframe or reshift this deeper civilizational problem of the the faulty premise of the relation to nature.
Well, Victor, you start with a big topic. Yeah, that we could fill hours with that alone. But I agree very much with what you're saying. I've been my medical career in the healing arts started as a medical doctor, and as a medical doctor, you look at the body and everything the body does as we have to correct it. There's something wrong and we have to correct it. In the years of studying at the university, I learned everything that go wrong with the body, all the complications, all the troubles, all the terrible things. There was not one single word about what we gain from having gone through a disease. Yeah, not one single word. Yeah, if that would be all that it looks like through medical eyes. It's just a huge. Oh, God should have studied medicine before he created us. Yeah, in a way. Yeah, but so it's a very arrogant attitude, I have to say. In homeopathy, it's different. We see the body and the patient always as our teacher. We bow down to the wisdom of the body because we know the body knows how to heal and how it wants to heal. And we got to support that healing, even though we sometimes don't know how it works. But that how is not so super important. What it what's important is really that this body has a story. This is not just from my birth in 1954 or something, yeah, that it goes through many, many generations, through the whole evolution of life, and all the experience that life experienced and what life achieved, the wisdom is stored in our body. So that's fascinating, yeah. And then to come in a medicine that's maybe 150 years old and say we know everything better is a little bit, well, naja, uh, I think we really need again to bow down to the wisdom of nature, to bow down to the wisdom of the body. And this body is a gift of Grandmother Earth. Yeah, she gives us. And the rules or the laws of healing in our body are the same that we see outside in nature. So when we gotta restore somehow the correct hierarchy, yeah, that and I think this is culturally very, very necessary in the time. We went through a long time of dominating and controlling, and we created a lot of fear and we created a lot of lack. And this fear drives us more and more to control and to dominate more, but there's no end to it. And yes, you know what I love is sometimes one of the most beautiful ancient literature of wisdom is the Tao Te Ching. I don't remember how many thousand years it's old, but it's old, yeah. And there's one verse in it where it says, "You want to improve life? I don't think it can be done. Life is perfect." Man, there's four great powers, it says there, and uh, man is great, earth is great, the universe is great, and the Tao is great, and the Tao is God in that context. And then it says, man follows earth, earth follows the universe follows the Tao. This is the hierarchy. That means our direct teacher of divine laws is earth. And when we bow down to earth, then we are in alignment again with how things are really. Yeah. How, and then it's possible that things get better, hopefully. And I think, like you said, homeopathy has a major part in that, a major part, because in homeopathy, it's never, I got to get rid of that problem. No, I got to understand it. And I give a remedy that supports the body to deal with it. And health is not going backwards in time before the problem. No, health is going through a problem and rising above it and learning from it. And our health gets bigger, our understanding gets bigger, our awareness gets bigger. So there's a great beauty. Yeah. You know, when you look in Western medicine, yeah, first thing we have to fight. Yeah, we have to fight whatever is. It's very effortful and it never stops. Yeah, and so I love homeopathy. I just have to understand. I don't have to conquer and do whatever. It's way more relaxing.
Wonderful. Yes, and homeopathy also allows us to begin to understand the nature of substance in a different way too. And I think this is also something very important to understand when it comes to reconceptualizing our relationship to nature. In the most general sense, we could say the understanding that we are led to through homeopathy is of a world that is alive and intelligent rather than dead and inert. And we see this even in the writings of Hahnemann, where in his Materia Medica Pura, he said medicinal substances are not dead substances in the ordinary sense. Rather, their true essence is only dynamic spiritual, is pure energy. Yeah. And so reconceptualizing in the context of medicinal substances that medicines are not things that are dead. Yeah. Their true essence is only dynamic, spiritual, pure energy. And so when we think of medicines in this sense, perhaps you could tell us a little bit about what the implications of understanding the use of a medicine not as something dead, as nature and the earth, not as something dead or as something inert, but as actually something dynamic, spiritual. What are the larger, broader implications of that? And what is the unique context that homeopathy allows us to understand in this sense?
That is a beautiful quote of Hahnemann. Really beautiful. And yes, for me, the years in the 90s that I lived with the native people here in Alberta was really crucial for them to live in a culture day by day where it's normal that you talk with an animal, that you talk with a plant, that you talk with a stone, and that all is alive. That you greet grandfather sun in the morning and thank him for rising up again, and that you uh, give your thanks for every meal to earth. Everything is alive. A river is not an it that flows there, an object. Yeah, a river is something that's alive, that's and also flows. We drink the water of the river, and then this river flows in us. Yeah, keeps flowing in us, and this is not beautiful metaphor. This is very substantially true. Yeah, and whatever happens to that river on the outside, guess what? It's going to affect me, yeah, on the inside, because it's going to affect the energy of that water flowing in the river. And guess what? When a river is dammed and both sides, yeah, and forced into a certain bed, and um, what that does to us, yeah, we sometimes don't think about these things. So for me, that was huge. And then coming back from there to my normal life as a medical doctor, and homeopathy helped me to bring that together. And there's one story. I once had a woman, she was very sick with a frontal sinusitis. A frontal sinusitis is way more severe than that's what we usually have, sinus affections of the axillary sinuses. Um, so I really was worried about her, and I had given her a couple of remedies that didn't work, and told her, okay, you have 4 hours time. In 4 hours, I write you a note for the hospital. You go in the hospital because this is not going well. I gave her one last remedy, was bryonia, and she got much better, and within a few hours. And then a few days later, after she recovered, she came to see me in my clinic, and we talked about it. And I asked her, "Do you know this plant? This is, I don't even know the English name of that. The German name I'm familiar with, but." And she said, "No, I don't." I said, "Let's go in the garden. It's a weed that grows here. Yeah. I want you to know what healed you. So when you see this weed, you know you have a friend, and you can give your thanks to that." I do not want people to think we just go to the shelf of the pharmacy and grab something from the shelf, and that's it. Yeah, it's just something we grab. Um, but that is something we call in the energy of a herb, of an animal, of a mineral, and this energy wants to help us and does help us when it has the right information. So in that way, I think to the attitude that as homeopaths we have towards nature is very close to the attitude of indigenous peoples. Just what you read from Hahnemann, this is beautiful. Yeah, for a native healer, of course, every plant has its spirit. and you talk with that spirit and you tell him what you want from it, and that's how it works. And in homeopathy, it's also, when I then started again doing the trituration, so making homeopathic remedies by hand. And in this process, you experience an aliveness of the remedy, because in a way we say, okay, whatever you are, yeah, this remedy, take me by your hand and guide me into your realm, into your world, yeah, so I can see through your eyes and can experience you. And in that guidance, yeah, when we are able to allow that, the remedy guides us through problems on the physical, problems on the emotional, and to the mental, where we usually get the first understanding. And when we keep going and we touch the spiritual, there's something where magic happens, things turn around, and we touch something very, very sacred. We touch the sacred core that God put into everything when he or she created that world. Everything, no matter how poisonous, yeah, has a sacred core. And this is what we touch in homeopathy. And this is what we touch also when we prepare a remedy. And nobody ever will think this mineral is a dead thing that has done a trituration and has experienced that.
Wonderful. Yeah, and in a sense, there's a longing in nature by the way that you describe this case and understand the relation of the person to the remedy. There's a longing in nature and also a kind of sympathy, you could say, a deep relatedness where human afflictions are mirrored and reflected in natural processes, but that also all of nature is not there standing against us. Yeah, because if it were, then the situation that you just described would not be possible, would it?
Yeah, yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. You know, I grew up as a nature enthusiast, yeah, and so with 20, I think with 19 or 20, I had founded in Germany an conservationist organization, which is still going strong today. And my dear daughter is running the youth group of this organization today, and so it's a joy for me just to see that. Um, and back then, I thought, nature is most happy we when nature gets rid of us. Yeah, the animals are most happy when they don't see us. But in the decades of living with nature in the healing arts, I thought, no, this is not true. They all have a deep, deep yearning to be seen and to be used, but not abused. Yeah, and the difference of abuse and use is to make it an object. That's also something that Tao Te Ching says. Yeah, if you make it an object, you'll ruin it. Yeah, you lose it. And this is what we make. We make it an object. Yeah, we do something with it. That's not it. It's what heals is relationship. Yeah, we get hurt in relationship and we heal in relationship. We hurt the relationship between humans and nature, and this planet deeply, 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 and we got to restore it. Yeah, that's our job, and we restore it with every homeopathic remedy that we give, and we restore it. In the end, it's about coming to a homeopathic lifestyle. As homeopaths, we start learning homeopathic remedies, and we learn it as a technique and 100 and 1,000 remedies, and we want to have more and more. But the goal of the path of a homeopath is that to become remedy, that you and I, the way we walk in life, we are remedy for every situation that life finds us. And this is finding this core of who we are and this relationship to nature, to situations we find, and to bring this wisdom alive in our life to walk that. It's not only a modality, a technique, a healing technique. Yeah, it's the way you walk in life. This is how I think about homeopathy. Something sacred in the end. Yeah?
Mhm. Wonderful. And of course our health in our life is fundamentally something sacred, yeah? And so it helps if we have a system of medicine that allows us to recognize that and allows us to see it. And and what you're saying brings to mind also the reality that when we look closely, we can see that the human morphology, the human organism, is, you can say, a kind of compendium or synthesis of the various forms that we see already in nature. Yeah, and we can think of, certain plants that have, say, an affinity for the heart, like digitalis or lily of the valley. And we see that even the rhythmic qualities of the heart, in terms of how the flowers grow on the plant, share a resemblance to or mirror already the rhythmic qualities that we have in our own body, reflected in our own organs. And I know that there are some homeopaths who are weary of the doctrine of signatures, but I'm wondering what your sense and your experience, especially uh, preparing remedies, does that give you any insight, or does it give you a feeling about this idea of signatures or similarity between the way that plants or animals or minerals are in their natural state and as they are then reflected in a human being?
Yes. Hmm. I do not like to start with the doctrine of signatures. Yeah, I do not like to philosophize or to theorize about it. What could that mean? It's yellow, so it has to do with the liver or stuff like that. Yeah, that can be true, and maybe it is, and maybe not. Okay, when you pick the chelidonium, for example, one of our main liver remedies, and there's this yellow sap coming out of the where you picked it, it's very obvious. Yeah, this is liver remedy. But I would not want to start there because I have a strong question mark behind all our theories when they are not based in the body and when they are not connected to the way we feel. When we're connected to our body, when we're connected to our feelings, and out of this connectedness arises an understanding that has value. Yeah. When it's a theory and understanding that's pure mental and disconnected from the rest, I'm very hesitant to believe anything. Yeah. The, that means I love when I triggerate a remedy, when I make a remedy, and in hindsight, I can say, you know what I found? Now I can see in the phenomenon of, in the morphology of the plant or of the animal. I can see the biology represented in our remedy. Yeah. So it's not, it's, but I don't like it to have it at the beginning. For example, I did a few months ago a workshop with a handful of people about the Western hemlock at the tree. Yeah, it's one of the main trees that we have here in the West, and it's a tree that's a little bit forgotten behind the more showy Douglas fir and cedar, and so everybody knows them. Maple and cedar and Douglas fir, wonderful, yeah. But hemlock is a little bit forgotten in the shadow of that. And it was so interesting that already in the and the group did not know what they are doing. It was a blind trituration. That means I have taken a few needles, 3, 4 needles, yeah, put them in mortar and pestle, ground them down in milk sugar, and until it was a plain powder. And this is what the people saw. I put in their bowl, in the mortar and pestle, and then they were grinding. And the structure is basically that we sit and we 6 minutes of grinding and 3, 4 minutes of scraping the bowl clean, then we grind again, and so on. And after 6 rounds, this is exactly like Hahnemann said it, the way we do it, yeah. And after 6 rounds, it's 1 hour, and then we have one sea level. So first, the sea level. What we mainly experience it, I mentioned that before, yeah, are symptoms on the physical level. Because we start with a substance, so it's vibrating still pretty close to the substantial level. So the resonance is mainly about myself and about the physical. All kinds of physical problems show up. Second hour is usually more about the emotional, and the third, where we get a little bit an insight in the thing. And the and when we go through that, there was already in C1 somebody that had no idea. They don't even know if it's a plant, an animal, or a mineral, or whatever it is. Yeah, it said, oh, I feel tired, and it feels so good to let my head hang down. Well, can you imagine when you look at the tip of a Western hemlock, like a tip of a Douglas fir is straight up. The tip of a Western hemlock always hangs down. It has a hanging leader. Isn't that amazing? Yeah, this slump, letting your head hang down, and here at the very beginning, somebody, it feels good to have my head hang down. Of course, you cannot avoid thinking of the doctrine of signature, and this is represented. And I'm happy when I have this. If I would have sat in front of the hemlock and said, "What does that mean?" and think about that, yeah, whatever I come up, I would doubt. But when I can see in the end, after having gone through the process, well, what I found is actually already represented in the physical in a hidden form, because nature usually has its mystery and wisdom hidden, yeah, in a form. Um, that makes me happy, and I know there's something true. So, in so far, yes, I partially love the doctrine of signatures. I'm very happy when I'm in my experience is alignment with that. Yeah, if I go through preparing a remedy and I can not see my results represented in some ways in the biology and in the physiology, in the morphology of the plant or animal, or then or mineral, then I doubt my own results. Yeah,
Hmm.
but when I see that, I know, we're close. That feels there's something that's going through. That's true. Yes, I think the doctrine of signature is something very beautiful, but I would be careful to use it as a tool, um, when we start from the mental. When you sit with a hemlock tree and you resonate and tune to the treeness, find your own inner treeness to resonate with this tree. And out of that meditation, or there certain things can arise. And out of this attunement with a tree comes an understanding of the hanging leader and hanging your head. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, but to look at the tree from a distance, this is the same thing, making it an object. Yeah, not relating, but making it an object. It's not great. I don't. So that's my understanding of the doctrine of signatures.
Yeah, and it's about being able to approach nature in a way where we're not falling back on assumptions or presuppositions or things we think we already know. Yeah. And I
That
think
is that is so well said. That's why I love to work with a group of people that don't know what we're dealing with, the substance, because then you're not in your head. Yeah, you don't have to. You you have to use your ability to perceive subtle energies that arise out of nothing. Yeah, out of a little powder that you grind down.
Hmm.
And that's fascinating. You know, when we do it and we know, it's way harder to get out of your mind, to get away from everything you know about this, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And because this is when you have your hands full, you cannot be given. The more you know, the less you will understand. Yeah. So to be able to come with this beginner's mind of I have no idea, teach me. Yeah. It's way easier when it's a blind trituration. Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's very beautiful. And it's also a much deeper experience for the participants
Hmm.
when they then usually I at the end of the first day, then I say what we've been doing, and then we bring it all together. Yeah, we bring together what we found on the physical, emotional, mental level. We bring that together with biology, with whatever is known so far in homeopathy, if it's a substance that's known in homeopathy, what we know from science, what we know from uh, traditions, indigenous traditions, folklore, or mythology. Everything then comes together. And with everything together, that's when we go in the second day, usually into C4, where we most of the time touch the sacred core. Because that includes all, it's not something spaced out, but it includes all the lower levels. Yeah.
Hmm.
And that's then really, and we are so far, then knowledge cannot get us on some other detours or dead end roads. Yeah, we are already so far in our energetic process of understanding this remedy that then knowledge is appropriate and it's beautiful.
Uh-huh.
I mean, it's also when you work with people that did it 20, 30 times, for them, it doesn't matter if they know. They know how to put things aside and to listen to what, to put aside what they know and listen to their body and what arises and the knowledge or that arises out of the body. But that needs quite some training and experience to be able to do that for many people.
Yeah, and because also culturally we tend to live, as you say, mostly here. And when you ask most people where they locate their consciousness, they will point to their head. Yeah. And it brings to mind there is a beautiful Greek word, esthesis, and the word literally means to breathe in. But
Mhm.
what is it? What does that mean? And it's also the root of our word aesthetic. Yeah. But to breathe in, it means actually to receive the soul quality from a living being in the world. Yeah. And actually, it means reclaiming the response of the heart to what's presented to the senses, rather than falling back into a dissociated mental state.
That's beautiful. Yeah. And I just remember, isn't it the Sufi people that say beauty is one of the 99 names of God? Yeah.
Mhm.
So beauty is a representation of the divine. And when you uh, talk about aesthetics and aesthesis as an energy, a very high vibrational energy touching us. This is really when you go in a trituration to the higher levels, C4 or maybe higher, you're touched with beauty, with pure beauty. Something that on the lower levels can be a challenge, yeah. But in the higher levels, you learn, wow, actually going through that was a blessing because it expands my understanding and I'm touched from something sacred. Yeah, because everything, no matter what it is in this creation, at least every natural substance has a sacred core. I'm sure that also every artificial substance has a sacred core, but it's sometimes hard. From nature, I know whatever it offers, yeah, in the core, it's sacred, and the core is beauty and it's wisdom. And this is where we end up when we go through the process. So I don't worry how difficult the process might be. Yeah. Um, but when I did artificial substances like use the anti-baby pill or something or gunpowder, it's not quite that easy to touch something sacred there. For me, it's often it's like in a proving. Yeah, you take something, you take you get symptoms at a certain time. You just hope the symptoms will taper off again, but there's not always this transformational quality. So it's like in artificial substances, yes, you get symptoms, then you stop your traderating, and because it doesn't go anywhere, there's no big turnaround, yeah, and you just hope that symptoms will taper off again, which they usually do, yeah. Um, and so in that way, yes, I do sometimes artificial substances, but it's not my favorite job because you don't have the deepest experience in making a homeopathic remedy is touching the sacred core. It's just the deepest experience you can imagine. And this is incomplete or more or less missing, or at least it's harder, for me, it's harder accessible. It feels like it's not there. With gunpowder, yeah, you end up with a problem. And yeah,
But then, of
but
course,
that is also so much about the homeopathic healing. Yeah, it's not just getting away from something. It's you include it totally like a bee sting. You give apis as a bee remedy, a remedy made out of the bee poison or out of the bee, yeah? And make peace with this bee sting, and that helps you to rise above it and then the swelling goes down and the pain goes down and of the inflammation or whatever it is. Yeah. So it's something. It's a piece that is not based on winning a fight because that is not peace. Yeah. That's American mythology, the old revolver, yeah, the peacemaker, yeah, or something. But that's a very distorted um, mythology, Wild West mythology, and that's not life really. Yeah, every winning comes with a price.
mhm. Wonderful. So perhaps you can take our listeners through the trituration process a little bit more, and then also perhaps talk about even the word itself and your understanding of the Shameeah process, as you call it, and why you don't use the word trituration in that sense.
Yeah, that is when I came 20 years ago. I'm German, yeah, and I came to Canada 20 years ago. And I thought, oh, the greatest that I have to offer is trituration. Yeah. And I love it. And this is really the greatest gift I can give to the world. Yeah. Then I came here and nobody was really interested in it. Homeopaths had no idea what it is. Yeah. And we're also used to learn in a weekend seminar about many, many remedies or groups of remedies, or yeah, and one weekend about lanthanite, you learn about 190 different remedies. Yeah. And get a system how to use them. And then I tell them to sit with one a whole weekend. That was not attractive. Yeah, and finally, there's um, um, a senior homeopath here on the coast told me, "Oh no, Roland, you should give it a different name. Trituration is an ugly word. It doesn't sound good. Nobody knows it. Nobody will come." Yeah, and so that's how I came up with the Shameeah. But let's start from the beginning. To triturate comes from Latin triturare, and what that means is to grind down into a fine powder. And that's something, to grind something down and with stone, or people do it did it for thousands of years with grain and everything, on herbs and seeds. So women and healers have done this forever. It's an ancient thing. now the word triggerate, it really, from my ears, and please forgive me, I have German ears. Yeah, I have a hard time hearing how that sounds for English ears. Yeah, when you're born into the English language, but for me, it sounds like rattling something mechanic, and it's not the. It has nothing of the magic of the and the beauty and the gentleness of this process of triggeration. So after a few years of kind of um, not very not being very successful with offering that to homeopaths or anybody, I took this advice of this very experienced homeopath and followed what she said and said, okay, what would be a good name for that? And then I came to the core of the process is the transformation. This comes from alchemy. Yeah, homeopathy is also based on alchemy, culturally, traditionally. And so it's about the transformation of the suffering into a healing that's into a gain. Like even today in trauma theory or trauma healing, they talk about the post-traumatic gain, the gain, the growth that you go through when you're through something difficult. And that's true for every healing. Yeah. When you're through, you grow above something, you understand, you include more of life. So it's not about getting rid and getting smaller, it's about can I open up more and include more of life. And so I realized, alchemy in Europe was mainly about making gold out of lead and stuff, transforming metals. But alchemy came to Europe through the ancient Greeks, where it was Shameeah, today's chemistry, Shameeah, and they had it from the ancient Arabic world, and back then it was Shameeah. And Shameeah, the ancient Arabic word, has this transformation of lower vibrating energies into high vibrating energies, and this is exactly what we do. We take the low vibrating energy of a plant, of a herb, of something, grind it down in a certain rhythmic way again, and release the energy and make it vibrate higher and higher until it turns around and comes to this transformation. And I thought, it sounds like magic, and it is magic. I love this word, Shameeah. Yeah. Okay, then I called it Shameeah, and that is just my thing of my variation of the C4 triggeration. The triggeration, originally was just what people did to triggerate, or also pharmacists did when they grind down a substance. Hahnemann created the homeopathic triggeration, which means a very structured process of one level consisting of 6 minutes of grinding, 3-4 minutes of scraping the bowl clean, and then comes the second, the third, the fourth, and in the end the sixth round, and then you have one sea level, and then you clean out the bowl, put in fresh milk sugar, and you then you go through the next level, and the so and to and it was in the 90s, early 90s, a biology student in Germany, Witold Eller, he started the resurgence of trigerations in homeopathy. And he studied biology, and in his holidays, he worked in a pharmacy to earn his money for his studies. And one day the pharmacist sent him in the basement, told him, "Hey, I need to have a remedy made of this herb. It's not available, but there's a homeopath that wants it. So this is how you do it." And he was sitting for hours in the basement of this pharmacy, grinding away this herb. Yeah? And he was amazed. He said, "Oh gosh, in sitting with this herb and just being silent and listening and allow it, I learned so much more than I learned in botany at the university about it." And he asked then later other homeopaths, "Hey, do you know about triggeration?" No, nobody knew. Yeah, what that is. Like when I some in the 80s studied homeopathy, they gave us a bit mortar and pestle and a little bit of the ink of the cuttlefish, like sepia, yeah, and had us grind 5 minutes and said, and that's how it works for hours. That was all. It was thought to be just a mechanical process, but that it can be an energetic adventure, that Vital Ella found out. And then he invited homeopaths, and then they were excited. And then they played around with it and said, "Okay, Hahnemann said to grind it down 3 hours. What is when we what happens when we add the fourth hour?" And they just tried it out, and they found there's something very beautiful added. It's something that maybe 200 years ago was not yet needed, but today is needed, that our remedies also vibrate on a spiritual level. Not only these 3 hours, the first physical, emotional, mental, but that we have a spiritual aspect that is already in the preparation of a remedy more readily evolved and available then for the patient. So that was the beginning of Siphon homeopathy. And for quite some years, I studied with Witold and I triturated, and I'm very grateful. I learned a lot from him. And then after coming back from Canada and with all my impressions and experiences with First Nations, I, I think I just added this attitude of deepest respect for the wisdom of nature, and yeah, a kind of not I want to know and I intrude into something, but hey, I'm the ball, fill me, yeah, and so it's more, yeah, it's a different attitude, this attitude of respect for nature, and that's something that's for me very important. For me, this is a sacred ceremony. It's a sacred ceremony where I learn to be intimate, where I establish an intimacy between me and a substance, between me and a part of nature, between me and expression of divine wisdom as it is expressed in nature. And that's something deeply, deeply spiritual. It's very, so I call it Shameeah today, but don't get hung up on this name. Yeah, it's meanwhile everybody life went on and everybody knows about triggeration. I would not need to invent another word anymore for it. Yeah, this is just how it happened.
Wonderful. Perhaps you can show the viewers the tools that you use in this process.
Well, the tools are very easy. It's just like Hahnemann said. Here you have a mortar, yeah, a porcelain mortar. You have uh, the pestle, and in this, you here I have a little container. When I fill that container with milk sugar, I know it's 6 grams because I tried it often and weighed it exactly. So I start putting 1/3 of it into the bowl. That's for the first 2 rounds. And then I add the little bit, for example, these days I'm just busy making a remedy out of the pear rust. A pear tree in my garden is really infected with rust. Yeah. So I want to make a remedy because I tried to treat it with homeopathy. It didn't work so far. Now I make a remedy from an infected leaf. Yeah. And it's about, so with 6 grams of milk sugar, we need 1/100th, 0.06 grams of the original substance. That's a tiny little speck of this infected leaf, about that much, yeah. Half of a fingernail, that would be about 0.06 grams. we put it in there, and then we start simply grinding, grinding it down in this milk sugar, and then for 6 minutes, yeah. After 6 minutes, we put the pestle down and use either a modern plastic scraper or a more traditional um, porcelain scraper, but they can break, yeah. And scrape the bowl clean, and after for 3 4 minutes, and that then it's 10 minutes, and this is one round, yeah. And 6 of these rounds give one sea level. After 6 rounds, we have done, and making it a little bit simpler, yeah, in between you add more of the milk sugars. So in the end, you have all the 6 grams of milk sugars in there. And it's a silent process. It's a process where we go inside and only make notes, take notes of what's happening, what we experience. Okay, left ear itches, right toe hurts, or whatever it is, yeah, or memory of this comes up, or idea of that. Whatever it is, we just write it down without editing it and without any censoring it. And then after that hour of silence, then we share what we had, and everybody shares what we experienced in this hour inside. And that's a very, and then we put things together. And then, it's when we do that in a group, the energy is way stronger than if I only do it alone. Yeah. So the energy we can hold is stronger. The remedy can express itself also in here a dozen people, not just in one. Yeah. And we can put the experiences of everybody together, and we already can see step by step a remedy picture emerge. Like when you when I come back to the hemlock, uh, like in the first was all kinds of physical things that we know from other conifers, also a certain stiffness and straightness and tired, and but then also I feel like in a shadow world, or I feel like in like held back, and this is amazing when you know in the end, when you bring in, yes, the hemlock is a tree that grows in the shadow of the cedar and the Douglas fir. The cedar and Douglas fir need a lot of sunlight to grow. The hemlock not. The hemlock grows in the shade, and for a long time it's in the shade. And then when the old ones fall away, cedar and Douglas, then the hemlock keeps growing. And the young ones that come in the forest are mainly hemlock, because the cedar and Douglas fir, they cannot grow in the shade, yeah, but hemlock can. So in the end, after 1,000 years, you have a hemlock forest here, yeah, unless there's a fire, which here in our area every 500 years originally. Meanwhile, it's more often than that. Yeah. But that changes the thing, the dynamic. And then it makes clear, yes, I feel in a shadow world, and actually it feels good, somebody said. I feel held back in life. I'm a late bloomer, somebody says. Wow, when you look at the hemlock growing in the shade, the hemlock is held back. So all this desire, what we had, for example, playful desire in C1, C2 in the first couple of hours, trying to play and to have a certain restlessness came up. And then this feeling of being held back, being stifled, being locked in, being trapped in something. Well, that's the experience of the hemlock in the shade of the other trees. Yeah. But the hemlock is in perfect peace with what it is. So the hemlock can give us peace in a situation that's for us painful. And this is where the healing comes in. Yeah. And then we make peace with the situation. And in the moment we have peace, we relax. In relaxation comes also expansion. Yeah. Whereas in stress and trying and efforting, there's always a contraction, tension, yeah, and life gets smaller. Our energy field gets smaller, whereas the healing is always downwards and in the expansion. And so we relax. And when we have peace with something, all of a sudden joy shows up. We are not held back at something that we suffer from and that we have to fight and that we have to effort to overcome. Yeah, we can relax. Yes, I take a little longer maybe. Yeah, and then you're not bound to it. You can harvest the fruits of what that means. And there's a beautiful indigenous story about the hemlock, and that the hemlock is the conifer tree with the smallest cones. Yeah, so because for some reason that's I don't want to tell the whole story. It's a beautiful story that helps so much to understand about the nature, also the homeopathic remedy of the hemlock tree. And in the end, God said, "Yes, you get the smallest cones, but you have the most of all conifers. So every hemlock is full with little tiny cones. So this is just the symbol of the harvest of having gone through something hard like the hemlock is going through. When we get stuck in that, when we get fight that, then there's a creates a lot of suffering and a lot of friction, and it takes a lot of pushing through and stuff. And in the end, it's not very freeing. Yeah, but when we can have peace, freedom shows up, freedom of choice.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. And it
Well,
it brings to mind this idea that there are, you could say, uh, cosmic forces that then evolve into a fixed form. Yeah. And it sounds like the process that you're describing, we're able to take the fixed form and expand it back out into this almost cosmic dimension.
yes, in a way, what is crystallized in the physical is a very dense energy. When you sit and grind it down, you release that energy. It creates an energetic field, a vibrational field that vibrates in the room, and everybody in that room that's part of that group resonates with it. And you you touch higher and higher levels until you touch the sacred, but the physical does not disappear because of that. It's included. So it's not something opposite to the physical, but the physical becomes the portal that you move through in order to reach the energy behind it.
Mhm.
It's a very deeply spiritual and deeply beautiful process. And people, when you experience something like that, what I tell you about the hemlock, yeah, when you walk in the forest, the hemlock is not a stranger anymore. You have a friend. You know it intimately. Yeah, you have a real friendship. It's not an it anymore. You are in a relationship with it, and it relationship that heals. We gotta come into right relationship. I think the mess that you in the beginning mentioned, where we find ourselves in globally right now at the end of a long period of trying to dominate nature. And yes, that sure had a lot of benefits, and we scientific and technological progress is enormous. Yeah, but it comes with a price, and it's now to bring back from like even from matriarchal times, yeah, things we forgot during the patriarchy, to bring them back and bring relationship into the whole process. Imagine when a scientist does not look only for how do I dominate that, but at first praise, hey, let me be a part of your healing, yeah, and let me understand what's happening there. If we changes something, like for me, every day before I start practicing, I pray and say, hey, Grandmother Earth, hey, God, bless me in what I do. Yeah. And let this little bit of healing that I practice today be in alignment and in coherence. And include it in the bigger healing, the way you want to heal. Use me as a tool for your healing because you have the bigger wisdom and I do. And I'm most happy when I can be a part of that. Yeah. And I think that's something that we need collectively in this time, just to bring right relationship again into this old hierarchical um, thinking of domination.
Hmm. Yeah, and it sounds like you've described very beautifully how homeopathy on many different levels can be one of the tools that we can use to arrive back at that place. Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah. And
You're
even
not the only one. Yeah.
not the only one, no, of
Like,
course.
I say that sometimes to homeopaths, don't criticize all other healers. Yeah, all healers, Western medicine and naturopathic doctors and homeopaths, we're all part of the self-healing system of nature, of earth. Yeah, we're one cell of her immune system, and as such it's how we complement each other, how we dance with each other, how we and when we come with that attitude, it's then uh, it's easier also as homeopaths. Yeah,
Yes, yes. And of course, I mean, even when we use the analogy of an ecosystem, an ecosystem that has been turned into a kind of a monocrop, I mean, it's no ecosystem at all. It's been
yeah,
reduced down to something that eventually will cause the earth to lose its vitality. Yeah. So seeing
exactly.
homeopathy as part of a broader network of efforts to bring healing to ourselves, bring healing to nature is a much healthier way of looking at things.
Yeah, bringing back diversity. Yeah, we have a big diversity. Every homeopath has his or her own specifics in the way he or she practices. Yeah, and there's a great diversity. Yeah? And also acknowledge that and respect that we are part of something bigger. It's not just homeopathy.
Yeah. And homeopathy is, of course, it's a living science. Yeah. And there's no such thing as a science that remains fixed. Because any science that remains fixed will go away. It won't remain relevant because
It's
science.
not written in stone. Things that are written in stone, that's Stone Age. So, yeah, no, it's got to be dynamic.
Yes. Wonderful. So we've covered a lot of material here. Is there any final words you'd like to share? Anything to wrap up the discussion?
Maybe I think there's a certain attitude that I try to live. This attitude of curiosity. Um, like when I see a plant or something, to see that plant, to feel into it. Wow, I would like to understand you. It's the same thing when a client comes. Wow, there's, I see the outside. I would like to understand you. And out of this understanding of feeling into each other, attuning to each other, there's a relationship arising. And this relationship is where healing happens. And we need that between each other, and we need that between us and earth. And that is for me a homeopathic practice and living and walking homeopathy every step of the day. And this is what I maybe whoever is listening to that to our conversation, try that out. I I can almost promise you it makes you happy. It's something very, very beautiful. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you all for listening, and we'll see you again soon.
Thank you. All the best. Yeah. Thank you for having me.